Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Cookie Jar Golf Podcast. A few days ago I managed to sit down with Martin Ebert at Royal St George's and have a chat through his Eclectic 18. It's fascinating to look through his take on links golf and his take on golf in general. He does have a bit of a penchant for links golf. He actually kept it to all British links courses. He did feel bad a little bit afterwards that 17 of the courses he chose were courses he consults at. But when you're keeping it to links golf in the UK, Martin's lucky enough to have worked with most of the good ones, so hard to avoid really. But he had some fascinating stories and some fascinating insights into golf, and we jump around talking about different topics within golf. But it was good fun to record, and I hope you enjoy.
Watch this. No way.
Let's kick into this proper. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Cookie Jar Golf Podcast. I am Tom Mills and today I'm sat in a wonderful location. We're in the George's Dormy House and I'm here with Martin Ebert. Martin, welcome.
Tom, thank you very much.
Second time on the podcast.
It is. God, I don't know. I must have done something wrong to stop me coming back for a second time, but good to be here.
We left it about a year, so we thought we'd give you a bit of a break. But thank you for agreeing to come on. What brings you to the coast of Kent in the deep midwinter? We're the latter part of December. What brings you to Kent?
Well, we're very fortunate in advising at Royal St George's, Royal Cinque Ports and Princes, and I would, if I'm bringing anyone to look at the great detail of links terrain, of green surrounds, green shapes, then these are the three courses that I would always bring them to.
Do you think these stand out in terms of...
For me, I think they're the best.
In the whole of Britain?
I would say, yeah. I think the fact that the collection is so tightly spaced, they're all in that one little string along the coast. But really, the quality of the shapes of the greens and green surrounds, I think, is...
What's your standout holes, do you think, or examples of quality green surrounds on these three courses?
Okay, so 6 Dunes on Princes, I think, is great. There's so many cases there actually where there's not a huge amount of bunkers, but just the shapes of the green surrounds are tremendous. Royal St George's, it has some wild greens, some greens that if we were designing them today, we would be told, dig that up and do it again. The 9th, I mean, what an incredible green that is! But it was played from a different direction in the old days. It was a par 3. The 4th is hardly, maybe. Just enough flag positions.
So good,
for
though, isn't
it? But and then we get to Cinque Ports, and you've got greens like, I always sort of quite often quote that I think the 16th is the best green in the world, even though it's got hollows all over it. And
what's
17
so good about 16?
16, I think it's just the way those shapes on the plateau green just provide so many interesting flag positions, but there are so many flag positions on the green.
Is that an important factor in sort of green design? Like the sheer pinnable positions.
It is really, modern day amount of golf that's played. When you do get the big events, having a variation of flag position is important. But some of the best greens are very limited in their flag positions. So, some of the greens that we'll be talking about and holes we'll be talking about today, they have that issue. But I think that. For me, the best greens are ones where they've got beautiful shapes, beautiful feature, but they do also offer a variety of flags, not only for maintenance, but also to vary the character of the hole. It can change dramatically as to whether the flag is in one part of the green or another.
I think some of the greens at Cinque Ports are probably some of the most interesting greens you'll find anywhere in the world. I mean, you have to forgive me because it's been a while since I played Cinque Ports. But is it the 4th or the... I think there's back to back. There's that real punch bowl green
in the third, yeah.
The third, and then you've got the drivable. It's not drivable, but it's a drivable. A little bit later.
The sixth,
phenomenal green sites. And just really tempt you as a golfer. And that third is just.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't get my breath when I saw that for the first time.
When you crest the rise and you just see that below you, think, God, look at that.
It's
just so old fashioned, old school. So I think the variation at Cinque Ports is tremendous. Sandy Parlour, the next hole. I mean, it used to play blind over the dune, but now it's got the sort of plateau green, so it's so different to the third just before it.
Are you able to make greens like that anymore? The third, big punch bowl. Is there much of a demand for that sort of thing anymore?
We always sort of think about this in terms of some of the best greens have got hollows in their surfaces, and the agronomists would tell us, well, that's a problem. You're only inviting some issues if you have those hollows in the surface. So it's something that is frowned upon. But actually, when you look at the great old greens, then they have that character.
There's some great examples of hollowed out greens, like Cruden Bay, where you've got the bathtub, or Appleby, where it's got the half pipe green. I think it's, again, 16, 15, 16, that par 3. And there's some wonderful kooky greens out there. And they're always the ones that people say, oh, do you play that green? But they just seem quite few and far between anymore. I think it's quite bold to do it, I suppose, now. And like you say, if it's against what the agronomists are saying, then
that's the problem. That is the issue. If you go against the theory, and there are problems. But no, you can still replicate similar sort of features still get some surface flow off the greens. So that's probably the way to deal with it. But if you've got the perfect terrain and the perfect sand underneath and a good free draining root zone, then why not?
Where's the best sand? Come on, where's the best terrain in Britain? We're going to go on to your Eclectic 18 shortly, and it's a
well. I must admit,
Britain, I
had a trip out to Portrush the other day, and then went along the coast on a bit of a walking trip in Donegal and revisited St Patrick's, which I'd been trying to court the Casey family over the design of that course, and of course Tom Doak beat us to it, which is fine. He's his track record is second to none, and I still reckon that is the best piece of ground I've ever seen for a golf course, the St Patrick's Links site. So it was with sort of slight a bit of upset that I was seeing what I was seeing. I mean, he's made a great job of it, and
but he's done a fabulous job of it. And from what I've not been there yet, from what I've heard, every report I've heard is absolutely glowing. And it's not easy to. There's not many new places. Well, it's not a new place because it was a course there originally, but there's not many builds now around. Obviously, they're doing the new one at Castle Stewart, and again, that's Tom Doak, but not a phenomenal amount of land you can work with now.
No, exactly. I think that was one of the best. I mean, there's some testing greens there. I'd say maybe, if we had been given the commission, we wouldn't have produced greens with quite as much undulation in them as those greens. But I think as a resort course, for people playing it once or twice, then it certainly causes a lot of discussion and but it's clearly the site and the terrain for golf is just outstanding.
Yeah. I mean, I've not done a huge amount of the island of Ireland. But from what I hear in terms of the terrain, and when you get around, I've played quite a lot in Northern Ireland, and the land is, breathtaking. It really is. But I think they are just absolutely blessed with the land out there. I've got a particular penchant for East Lothian. I think that the land there is just the first time I played North Berwick was like playing off a car park. It was, it's so firm. I was chatting to an American friend recently, and we were talking about links, in America, and he basically was just saying, that it's just really hard to find land as firm as that. We just don't have that firm land. It's all been capped, or I don't know.
I agree. I think that it's the quality of the turf on our best links, and obviously it depends how they're maintained, and these days to a certain extent how much water you've got to put on them to keep them in great condition as well. But I do think that it's that club to ball and turf contact, which is different to the bent grass of the States, or of other regions. I think that's just as important as the way the ball reacts on the green, for instance. And we saw it at St Andrews on the old course, just how firm they were, and that's sort of in terms of almost overly firm, but that's what you want in terms of the ball receiving itself on a green, is not just pitching and stopping. You want some run on the ball, but also I do think it is that contact with club to ball.
We bumped into each other at St Andrews a few times at the 150th, and I walked the course on that Wednesday. I've said this on this podcast before, I genuinely couldn't see them getting anywhere near par because the ground was just like
concrete, wasn't it?
It was the hardest thing I've ever seen, and then they still absolutely dismantled it.
Yeah, but it was amazing.
That was the firmest I've ever seen anything. Was that?
And in some ways, I guess the course did sort of stood up to a certain extent, but I guess the driving distance, the ball, they might have been pitching it 300 plus, but then it was running another 100 or more. So that was the only thing. Does it with the the old course? Does it test them from all the way through the bag side of things? Yes, they've got to be brilliantly controlled with even the shortest little shot or pitch. It needs the ultimate control going onto greens as firm as that. But it's a great course, and it's it's one of my favourites. I was only telling the story earlier today down in the bar at St George's about the 1938 article that was posted describing a Super Championship course which was meant to be designed back in 1938 at St Andrews, because they said the old course was obsolete and that it couldn't stand the test. 8 of the holes were drivable, including the two par threes, but and then Harry Colt was coming in to design a Super Championship course using the new and the Jubilee, and then the war came along and it never happened. But that was going to produce a Super Championship course, as they described it, of 7,600 yards back in 1938.
Well, we'll get on to your Eclectic 18 shortly, but the new and the Jubilee are not in it, and they are wonderful golf courses. Just out of interest, which is new or Jubilee?
The Jubilee's got more interesting terrain, I suppose. But I think and to be honest, I don't know the Jubilee as well as I should, with my old boss Donald Steele having done a major redesign on it. But I've always been, when I've been at St Andrews, it's been the old course and the new course that is really I've played. We've looked at the new professionally and looked at the Eden as well. And you're right, maybe there's so many holes you could put into.
Well, the Eden's another great. Eclectic. I mean, I've only played like the front 9 of the Eden, but it's just some of the holes out there are fabulous.
Well, when we did our research, I mean, some of those holes were criticised when Cole first put them out there, because they are some severe greens, some really incredible greens. But you're right. I think those front 9 are very good.
The land out there is just so good. But St Andrews has made your Eclectic 18, and it's come in at number 17. Yeah,
I mean, I've been listening to some of the other Eclectic choices. I can't remember. Was Bruce? Was he the first?
Oh,
or was he
I
the
don't know.
18th? Anyway,
don't trust Bruce. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
But no, I would say I just can't go beyond the 17th.
Some would say it's sadistic, Martin. That's I'm looking at your whole card. I would say the whole thing is fairly sadistic. But I mean, you could have gone with the first, the 18th, the second, the 7th.
What hole plays over a hotel with a road beside it?
Has it always played over that corner?
Well, the railway sheds, as far as I'm aware, then that's always been the line of it. But it just breaks all the rules, doesn't it? Yeah. Absolutely every rule. I mean, there's a public footpath with people walking towards the line of play. It's just lunatic, but it's just brilliant as well. And you can just know that anything can happen when you get to that hole. Absolutely anything can happen.
One of the questions I ask the architects that we get on the podcast: are you a subscriber to the old course being the most architecturally interesting courses there is?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I just love I guess it's just as basic as I just love the shapes of the ground.
Yeah.
And they're not 100% natural. I think there's strong evidence that old Tom did a fair bit to it, and but I think the result of it, the shapes of the green surrounds, I think it is the model for all. I often give a presentation where I say that it's the mother of all courses, but no other course is like it. I mean, no other course has got 2 par 3s that I know of. Maybe there is 1 or 2, but only 2 par 3s. It plays into the town, out of the town, the 1st and 18th, just on one huge great bit of ground, which did used to have a bunker in the middle.
On the 18th side.
On the well, no, it's more on the first. It came into play more off the first, and then they reclaimed the first fairway,
because that land is like some people don't know, some people do. It's very flat. The land it's probably the only flat part of the old course is on the fairway of the first, isn't it?
Yeah. So reclaimed ground. But that bunker. Just imagine if you stuck a bunker in there. I think I was asked.
It would change it completely now.
Yeah,
I'm not sure that you'd survive if you managed to put one in there now. I think one of the most interesting anecdotes about the old course, and I've heard it a few times, is the old course first is almost intimidating because it's so forgiving. Mm-hmm. You've got 75 yards. Something like 70 yards.
More, I should think, yeah.
To aim at. And it's almost like, where do I go? It's like really intimidating.
The horror stories of it. Yeah. You just got to gird your loins and just focus on something down there, but
and the other
don't
thing
look at the out of bounds.
About the old course is that obviously it used to be played in reverse. Have you ever played it in reverse?
I've not done that.
Have you not? No.
That sounds
it's interesting if you look at how the 17th would play if you played it in reverse. That road hole bunker suddenly becomes much more sensible.
Yeah.
In terms of where it's placed and how you would play into it. Where I think where it is for 17th, just there's no sense to it whatsoever. It's like,
but I don't know. You think of the great shots there, and
Cam Smith's this year.
Yeah, Cam Smith's. Sevy's, David Marsh, who's just sadly left us. But what an incredible shot in the Walker Cup he hit in there to seal the Walker Cup. So it's just a scene of great moments, and I think it's because of the nature of the hole.
Was it Nakajima?
Nakajima. Sands of Nakajima. Sands of Nakajima. That was Henry Longhurst's great. He was great moment.
I watched a video of that recently, and he's just there, just scratching his head. Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't get that now. Someone who's actually in contention, he just looked perplexed. He was more than angry. He was just fully perplexed.
No, I think it is. Well, it had to be in the 18.
Yeah,
Tom. It really
it's a
had
very,
to.
very
Couldn't
good
leave
one.
that one out.
But you've been very good with this, Martin. You've provided me with not only your first Eclectic 18, but some backups as well. Which is nice. I've told you it's against the spirit of things, really, but you will insist, and we'll talk about some of the backups because I think some of those stories are going to be important. But let's go back to the beginning. So you've gone for Portrush as a first, which I think is an interesting choice because you've got external out of bounds and internal out of bounds, and probably one of the most fantastic greens. Why have you gone for Portrush first?
Yeah, I mean, this has been a fascinating exercise, just trying to work out the holes. And I had the fifth at Portrush. I just love. I think that's a fantastic hole. But,
that was in mine.
But there's another one that when we come to 5, is the reason why it edged Portrush out. But so then I was thinking for Portrush, and what would be a great first hole? And I absolutely think that the out of bounds, both of which are actually internal, really, they're within the golf course.
I suppose one is the driving range, or the chipping range. Yeah.
And that is controversial. I think there were calls for it to be, obviously, why is there internal out of bounds on this great course? And then Rory hits it out of bounds. I think he could have won the Open. I think if that wasn't out of bounds, he would have. Do you think? I mean, the stories are that he'd hit a couple out on the right the night before in practice, and so that was the next shot he hit was the one, don't go right. But if he'd found his ball on the trample,
what's the story behind that bit on the left? Did it
on the left? Well, that was a triangle that the club didn't own.
It's just a tiny triangle, isn't it?
Well, quite a big triangle. It bounds the 18th as well, so it's a reasonable size piece of ground, and that is why it's out of bounds because historically.
Do the club own it now?
They own it now.
They've just done it for...
Yeah, but now they just kept it OB. But you just think, obviously he was nervous. Yeah. But then he finds a trampled bit of ground, knocks his 8-iron, 7-iron onto the green, makes his par, and off and running he is. But he took 8.
I know.
Poor chap. I mean, that was so sad.
I think the thing with Rory, I mean, these podcasts always go wildly off topic, but when you think he missed the cut by 1 that year, and I think he was on the Calamity. It might have been Calamity, or even it might have been
Calamity. Yeah,
where he took a 3-putt something from, and he missed one from like a foot
from nowhere. Exactly.
And you missed the cut by 1, and he had the whole world on his shoulders. Yeah. What was great about it is they did get someone from the island of Ireland, and Shane came through, and he was.
Well, and I was there as well on that behind the grandstand, behind the first green, when Darren Clark, hit the first tee shot and cleared the bunker on the right. He took the hole on, and it was so fascinating. People did different things on that hole. And then he knocks it up onto the green, holds the putt. I mean, what a fairy tale start. Yeah. And then what was he, 3 under after 5 or something ridiculous?
Oh, I know, it's amazing. And they worship him there at Portrush. They love Darren there. Of course.
And the other reason for choosing it as in the Eclectic is that, it's a severely uphill approach into that green. And there's not many good, really good uphill holes. And I think that is just in a class of its own. As you said, the green is just brilliant up at the end of the hole, sort of divided into quadrants. You got the huge cavernous bunker sort of waiting in the approach. Anything short and left is just going to come back into that bunker. So no, I think it is well worthy of there. I would defend. I really hope that the OB stays in right and left for the next Open. Really, what an admission it would be if it was taken out. So, but let's see.
Well. Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Like you say, it is an admission if they do change it. And I think you've got to keep these nods to your heritage because it'd be quite easy to homogenise a lot of golf courses. So,
and I have to say, I think, you know, the variation of strategy on that hole, a lot of it was down to the out of bounds because, you know, otherwise, I'm sure they'd all be wailing away with the driver. But a lot of people hit an iron, left it short of the bunkers, and then they were leaving themselves probably almost 200 yards into that green. So,
and you've got to be... That sort of front portion of that green is no-go. You don't want to be anywhere near it. Yeah. You could have another 200-yard shot back, you know. Or you could have 60 yards back if you're a bit short on that hole.
So,
no, wonderful first choice. Wonderful first choice. So we've got a few things to move on to. Aberdeen's an interesting one because I eagled it. I've got to get my own golf in there. Aberdeen, par 5.
Yeah. Well, I think everyone just sort of loves that front nine at Royal Aberdeen, you know, just in amongst the dunes, you know, the first hole playing down to them or down to the coast, and then 2 as a whole classic hole, you know, in the valley in the dunes. I mean, it is a special place. So yeah, I just think it's probably a birdieable hole for the better players. Eagleable, obviously,
well,
from the really good players.
I don't get many eagles in my life, so that clearly must have struck a chord. I probably played it about 2 years ago.
But no, I mean, what terrain it is for golf, really.
I think it's some of the most fabulous land in Aberdeen. And people talk about the back nine there. I honestly didn't honestly move out of the dunes, but I didn't feel like a huge transition in the course, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think quite often when you see, you know, a lot of these old courses, they were rooted with the best land on the front nine. You know, you think Mackernish, you think of Royal County Down, Turnberry, even, you know, a lot of these courses had that best land for the opening holes.
Is there a reason for that, do you think?
The only thing we can come up with is, you know, match play was much more in vogue and they didn't want to waste the best land on the closing holes, which might not be played. But certainly anyway, the choice that Royal Aberdeen was to go with the coastal stuff on the outward. But I agree with you. The back nine's not weak by any means. You know, overall though,
and the history there is brilliant. And the clubhouse Aberdeen, I think, is one of my favourites.
Yeah,
the fact that it's so close to the first tee and the whole.
Well, the first tee just being right outside it, and everyone's watching as they're teeing off. I think it's pretty special. Wonderful bit of land. You mentioned Mackernish. You've actually got Askernish. I have
in your Eclectic 18 here. And all I know about Mackernish and Askernish is they're really far away. Are they close together?
Are they close together geographically?
They're kind of in the west, aren't they? Somewhere?
Yeah, they're very much. Yeah, no, it's one hell of a trek to Mackernish. I think probably in some ways, arguably, it'd be easier to get to Askernish.
Really,
if you hop on the plane from Glasgow, it's only 45 minutes across, and then it's a half an hour drive down to Askernish. But no, a few real connoisseurs of architecture have been out there and had a look. Obviously, it was old Tom Morris's design back in 1891. I was fortunate to be asked amongst a group of others to go and refine the course. And to be honest, we're not sure whether we found the old course. But
so how did that look? You had to go there, and did you do like a topographical survey, or were you just wading around trying to find things? How did it work?
It was a mixture. It was trying to find the holes like old Tom Morris would have found them in the first place. So we whacked some pegs in various places where we thought tees would be good, dog legs would be good, greens would be good. But we did have an aerial photograph. We did have a GPS unit which would record where those pegs were. So we retired back to the Borrowdale.
Old Tom had that as well, didn't he?
Yeah, old Tom had it, yeah.
He was there just with his sat-nav, yeah.
Yeah, well, we did it in old Tom style, but with a bit of technical help. But and then we retired back to the Borrowdale Inn. And then just got the laptop open and just thought, where do these holes? Just let's choose the best. The best ones.
When you have a green site and you have a tee, of course, when he laid it out, the green site was essentially the tee because they just went from one to the other. But then it's still not a straightforward exercise in going from A to B.
No.
So how do you have to sort of just work with what's in front of you and think, well, this is how this would have shaped?
I mean, the topography of the dune land at Askernish is quite dramatic, and so. But there were these flattish, and I have to say flattish, they weren't totally flat, but flattish areas where you'd think the greens were located. So they sort of gave us the hint of where old greens might have been, and then it was really a question of linking them up into a sensible routing.
So was Askernish in a playable condition when you went there?
They had 9 holes, but there was nothing like it is today.
Okay.
It had just sort of contracted down to a very rudimentary 9.
Okay. Maintained by
the local the one greenkeeper I think they had at the time. So now they've only got they're up to 2 or 2.5, but no irrigation. Green speeds, which probably, I don't know, they're so slopey, it's difficult to measure them, but they're probably 7 or 8 maybe on the stimp meter. But yeah, they're wonderfully. You wouldn't think that anything's been constructed, because I guess it hasn't been. But it is some great terrain, some great coastal stretches of holes. And I, after helping them find it, and it wasn't by any means all my work, it was a group of us. Went out for the Askernish Open for several years in a row, and would always play in the last game in the Askernish Open, because it would always take quite a long time. The rough gets so thick.
Really?
It's just the thickest rough you can imagine. So they have a rule called the Ralph Rule, after Ralph Thompson, the key man of the project in the early days, and where you just drop it out on the fairway, which I never wanted to play until I was something like 50 for the front 9, and then I decided to do it on the back 9. But anyway, it takes so long that we decide to go swimming during the round in the Askernish Open. So the record number of swims, I think, was Adam Parks, former Cambridge captain. I think he did 4 swims in the round on the coastal stretch from the 6th through to the 12th tee.
I bet it was difficult to swing a golf club. Sodden.
Well, the maximum number of swims I managed was 3. Was quite proud of that until Adam came along and beat the record. But we played it with
when you say swim, you're actually swimming?
It has to be a full submersion.
So you need to just dip in, come out.
Yeah, but it's pretty chilly at
I can imagine,
end of August. But it leads me to one story about this hole.
So you've gone with the 12th.
Number 12, which is the most crazy par 5. It's a multiple route hole, blind second shot up and over a dune bank, but you can hit it way left if you want to. But anyway, one particularly foul day, and I won't name my fellow competitor, but it's a good friend of mine, and we went and did the swim. It's traditional to have the final swim at the 11th green, so we did that, and then came back up, and he decided it was such a foul day that much better to just play the hole without any clothes on at all. So we're standing on the 12th tee.
I hope he's in good nick.
Reasonable.
Because anyway, that could get a bit.
So we're standing there, and he's quite a quick player, and he froze, and we just thought, what's up? Why are you not hitting the ball? And we were all sort of laughing anyway. But he just said, "I can't do it. Impossible. I need my glove." He walked back to his bag, put his glove on, hit the shot, and played the rest of the hole naked. But I won't name him.
That is a story. See, and that's why we do the Eclectic 18. We want to know all these fun things. That's why we want to know these. And that's the thing. It might not be the best 12th hole we've ever played. Perhaps it is, but it does come with an interesting story.
Oh, it's an amazing bit of terrain. It really is. And in fact, there was a bunker there, and we were criticised for how crass to put a bunker there. And in fact, the bunker had appeared. The cattle had created. The cows sheltering had created it. So just exactly like an old bunker. So it was. It's just that's how natural and raw it is.
Oh, it sounds like amazing. It needs to be somewhere I need to visit. But you mentioned in your talking about Askernish there, you mentioned green speeds. Mm-hmm. I saw something on Twitter recently about green speeds in the sort of 40s, 50s, and it was specifically talking about America in terms of like Oakmont and Augusta and a few places like this. And the green speeds were considerably lower than they are today. Do you think, from an architectural point of view, that the increase in green speed is kind of... Do you think that's for the benefit of the game, or do you think it detracts from how it's meant to be played?
No, I think even the massaging that went on the 11th green at St Andrews, for instance, was criticised. How can you change the old any of the greens of the old course? But in fact, it was restoring a flag position that had become untenable because green speeds had got up so high. So, I think when certainly for operational reasons, the Open is rarely played on greens which run faster than 11, probably.
Which is really fast, by the way.
Exactly.
That's really quick.
But when you get into the realms of 12 and 13, it's ridiculous. So I totally agree. I think 10 is a good speed, and if it's a well designed green, that's good, because if you've got big slopes in greens, which then you're impossible putting downhill, then they become so difficult to hit the ball uphill as well. You've got to
arguably Augusta now it's. I mean, it'd be sacrilege if I said it was silly, but some of the ways you have to putt on Augusta, you can see it's just it's nigh on impossible now if you get yourself in certain positions, and it wouldn't have been like that 40, 50, 60 years ago. Well, 60, 70 years ago maybe.
You look at the old footage, and it was certainly a different ball roll altogether, wasn't it? So
do you think it'd be more interesting if we just slowed it all up a little bit?
Yeah, as I say, I think when you get to 12, 13, it's so hard to even judge it at that speed, isn't it, really? If you've got any form of slope on the greens, and you look at some of the great old architects, they love putting some big undulations in, but just it's a shame when they don't work anymore.
Well, we've got one at Blackwell. Our 15th at Blackwell is it's so severe now that there's probably 2 or 3 pin positions, and it's a fabulous golf hole. It's absolutely fabulous. It's one of my favourites on the golf course. But it's when you get the greens quick, it's very, very, very difficult, and it wouldn't have been like that when they played at 7 or 8. But I've gone on a complete tangent, as I always do. Your Eclectic 18 is very links dominated.
Well, yeah.
So you can answer the question: is Ganton a links?
Well, it used to be by the sea. It's got most beautiful sandy subsoil.
You've got it at number 3.
Yeah, and it's inland. It's very much inland these days. But I just think it's just a beautiful bit of terrain, and it's beautiful turf as well. And that's largely down to the sandy nature of the soil. The third was short par 4. So definitely got to get a few of those in. I noticed you focused on my back nine, which had some testing par 4s, but the third at Ganton, it's probably drivable for some of the guys. The beautiful old pictures of the bunkers at Ganton. There's this incredible sort of diagonally running bunker, really tempting people to carry the bunker off the tee. And a lovely bunker up on the right hand side of the green as well. Huge green front to back, loads of beautiful undulation in it. So I think it's
Is it still fun designing short par 4s? Is that fun? I imagine that's the best part of the job, designing short 4s.
Definitely, those shorter 3s, shorter 4s, and shorter 5s are great fun to mess about with, I must say. Do you think Ganton's like the Ganton third is a prime example of a short 4? Is that how? I think it is. Yeah. There's a bit of out of bounds. It's quite a long way right, but there's out of bounds in play. But I think the bunkering really makes the whole. And again, a varying sort of strategy is definitely adopted when the best players go and play there. And I think one of the things is don't make it too long. So gradually, some of these short 4s, the tees have been taken back and back and back. And sure, these elite players are hitting it so far, but it's almost more fun. All of these short 4s, when you do give everyone a chance to
I think a 4 which starts with the number 2 that's a really good golf hole.
Yeah.
You're not going to go far wrong.
Exactly. As long as there's enough sort of fun, up around the green. I agree.
I think I think in mine I had Castle Stewart third, fourth, which I think 280, but there's trouble everywhere. Yeah. Absolutely everywhere. And even if you decide to lay up, there are bunkers to penalise you. It's just I love it. I love a good short.
No, I think in general, our short 4s have probably got a bit too long for for club golfers. Yeah, and that everyone of a reasonable level and who can hit the ball reasonable distance should have that fun and that elation of getting close to a.
Well, and I bet you when you give golfers the opportunity to if it gets to 350, I'm not standing there thinking I can get on, which kind of then just makes the decision for me. Whereas if you give the golfer the opportunity, it's not my words, it's the words of a friend of the podcast, Byron, the opportunity to fail. I could get on the green from here. Yeah. Then that's where really big scores come in. Yeah. I think when we played Kenema recently, the only holes that really flummoxed all of us were the short ones because we all thought we could bully them, and you can't. Yeah, a well-designed short 4 is.
I agree.
It's good. So you've gone from a short 4 to a really long 4. We won't spend long on the 4th at St George's because it's been nearly everybody's Eclectic 18. It's a wonderful.
Yeah, well, there's some other good holes at St George's. I mean, 12th, I think, is a wonderful, again, short 4. And that would have got in if it hadn't been pushed up by Askernish, I think it was in the end, wouldn't it? But so Royal St George's, I mean, the huge, great bunker on the right-hand side, that's the feature of Royal St George's. All right, the maiden's important as well, but
and the green,
I just love that bunker feature, and the green is crazy.
The green is absolutely bonkers.
Absolutely crazy. But
in your alternate, this is where it all gets a bit interesting. In your alternate 18, you gave me Woking. Which is, everybody loves Woking 4th.
Yeah. Well, I used to be a member there, and inspired Tom Simpson to take up the profession of golf course architecture from his legal background, and just the way that green slopes away, the sort of nerve-wracking tee shot alongside the railway line if you're going to take the hole on, and if you pull it left, either intentionally or unintentionally, then that shot over the bunker to the away sloping green is brilliant.
Yeah.
So obviously inspired by the 16th of St Andrews, but.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Is that where the inspiration came from?
Yeah, Stuart Payton and John Lowe, they were the two guys who really were the architects of Woking.
And they went out to dig the bunker, didn't they, on 4?
I think it is. I wish it had been in there, but I think Royal St George's again came back to the links game.
And then Royal Worlington 5. We've got 5 as another one where you've got a really interesting alternate, which I'm going to get wrong again. Is it the Ailsa?
No, Aisleby.
I can't read or spell. Aisleby.
I'd love to have put this one in as the 5th. It was a little 6-hole course that a real gentleman called Christopher Holloway commissioned on his beautiful estate in Somerset, overlooking the Blackmore Vale. His house sits up on top, looks right down a huge slope to a big lake that he built, and there's a 5th hole is a short 3 across the lake to a tiny little green with lots of undulation in it. You can play it actually from lots of different angles. We got 6 greens there, and you just play it from loads of different angles to produce 18, a routing of 18. You can't fit many on the course, but it would be.
Can people play this? Is that?
Well, needs a little bit of an invitation only.
Is it? Okay.
State, but so maybe it doesn't even qualify on that basis. But I thght it needed a mention.
Well, he might get 1,000 letters in the post now. That'd be quite good.
And it was named after the Aisleby tea estate, which was in his family's possession in Sri Lanka. And so he came back and named his wonderful house and property Aisleby. But it's if you get the chance, it might be a good story. It might be a good little podcast actually
But
have a trip there. He got pipped
by Worlington,
by the bunkerless 5th hole at Worlington,
where I've not been.
Really hard. Yeah. It's not far away from you, and you need to complete your education there. Everyone knows it as the best 9-hole course in the world, possibly. Herbert Warren Wynne wrote loads about it, but the 5th, probably it was my old boss Donald Steele who was great in describing the green as a vaulting horse. It's a brilliant expression. When you know the green, it just rises up, but it's only, I think it's something like, in terms of the width, the playable width of the green, it's probably about 8 or 10 yards wide.
Really?
And it just drops off into Mug's Hole to the left and a steep bank off to the right down to the actually an out of bounds ditch. But it is just, it's one of those holes where you're standing on the tee and you're just nervous until you see the balls fly, and generally you're turning away in disgust as it goes down into Mug's Hole. But when it's flying,
for me, Martin.
When it's flying at the green, it's a no better feeling. But no bunkers, and it's just beautifully defended by the width of the green, the really steep surrounds, and the incredible green contours.
There's a bit of a theme with your 3s. So I'm looking at them. We've got Royal Worlington 155, the 7th at Rye 158, Royal Troon 8th 123.
Well, that's the shorter, yeah.
They're all quite short.
Yeah, and I have to say, I think there is I know a lot of people don't like the long 3s. I actually do think, and probably they're increasingly an important part of modern golf, because it's the only place where we can test these great players with a long club on an approach shot. Most of the par 4s now they can reach with an 8 or a 9 iron. So if you can stick a long 3 in, so Calamity would have been a good one at Portrush. That would have been there, but it's not.
That's a really long 3.
That is a long 3. So I guess these are the threes that just fell out of the exercise, and we've only got 4 in there. And I typically now would love to have 5 par threes in a course. I think everyone loves really good par threes, and if you can find 5,
do you think
ones.
it's people have started to move away from the formula of 4 par threes, 4 par fives?
Yeah, I think there's absolute no. Well, it depends what the land dictates and what the best holes are from that land. But as a rule, I think we quite like the opportunity to present more than 4 threes on a course. So 5, 6 maybe, 1 too many. So 5 seems to be the good number.
Oh well, the Berkshire Red has got 6 threes, and I think it's one of the most fantastic golf courses. The Berkshire Red.
No, the Berkshire should have been in here actually, and
it can't because it's a heathland, and you explicitly put links on it, Martin. So we can say it's your niche. And wrapping up, I think the front nine, because I want to get onto this mutant of a back nine, but one of the most wonderful holes in golf, the 9th at County Down.
Yeah. Now, which one?
You've gone for 2. You've gone for / number 1 or Annesley. I've not played the second course.
You've not played. You went there though.
I've been there and I've looked over it. And I think some of those new holes you've put around that corner look absolutely fabulous. You can see them from the back of the third. Third
green and fourth tee. Fourth tee, you're looking down onto the 9th on the Annesley.
Do you think second courses are overlooked too much?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the Annesley links is just. I think it's the perfect foil, really, for the number 1 course. The real test that is. Just unrelenting. And you could either go for the 9th on the number 1 course there, which is
the 9th on the Annesley. It can't possibly be as good as the 9th on the.
It's a totally different hole. It's a short 4, but it shares with the 9th on the number 1 the backdrop of the mountains of Mourne, and so any hole that I was choosing at Royal County Down had to have that backdrop. You couldn't be playing away from it. And both of them do. And I would argue that the views from the 9th on the Annesley links is possibly better than the view from any other part of the course. It is just outstanding, and it plays around this enormous Great Dune down at the far end of Royal County Down. So at the risk of upsetting them at Royal County Down, I think I'll go with the Annesley links one.
Wow, love it. We like a bit of controversial in this pod. But you've gone a bit less controversial with 10. We're going to start the back now, so just to round up the front.
You missed
line.
A couple of fronts, yeah.
I know, we're not going to go through them all because we don't have time.
Exactly.
But we've missed a few. It comes in as a par 35.
Mm-hmm.
It's got 3 threes, 2 5s, and it comes in at 3,300 yards, so not enormous.
No.
But then you just go turbo on the back. It's
better just put a quick mention in for Carnoustie 6.
Carnoustie 6.
And Rye 7. I know we did talk about
Rye
it.
7.
But I mean, Carnoustie with the Hogan stories and whatever is just amazing. And Rye's just full of, I think 5 great par 3s. I think they're all good. But, 7's a pretty standout 3.
Yeah, 5 and 7 are just both.
Yeah. And 2 from nothing really is a brilliant par 3. And 14 is pretty.
I think one of the most wonderful traditions at Rye is where you tee off 2. Tee off 3, finish 2, go on to 3. It's just
exactly.
I think Rye's just so
yeah. So it wraps up front.
Wonderful little.
Have we done all the front ones there? Oh no, hang on, Troon.
We touched on Troon in your penchant for short 3s, but the shortest of the 3s.
It's just the scariest hole.
Is it?
I mean, I've been fortunate to referee in the Open at Troon, and even with these great players, that you can sense the nervousness when they're standing on that tee. Until they know that they've hit that green surface, because they know that if they miss it, any score's possible. So
I've never not played Troon, but I did watch the Open at Troon the year that Stenson won.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there on the Saturday, and I think they make such a big deal of that corner as well, where you've got stadia everywhere just around that corner, and you got the glide cam over the top. So I can imagine as they coming into that sort of amphitheatre, that the pressure must really for a 120-yard shot, it should be bread and butter.
And I think for the next Open next year, or not next year, the year after, it could we could be seeing a grandstand that goes the full length of the hole potentially.
Really,
and
a bit sort of waste management, or
almost an element of that. But I think it's one grandstand that will be full from dawn till dusk.
But you can see so much of everything else as well. You can see them play in 7. You see the approach on 7. See the putting out in 7. That's a great place to set up shop.
I think it's just the most wonderful, the shortest, short hole you can imagine. Played as 100 yards in the Open on the Saturday, I think it was.
So obviously a lot's made of Sawgrass 17. Not done Sawgrass 17. Do you think it's a more difficult green surface to hit than Sawgrass?
I would imagine so. I've never been to Sawgrass, but I would think, just the mental issue of being surrounded by water makes 17 seem even smaller than it is. But I would think I'd love to measure the two, but it must be a damn sight smaller, the postage stamp. Must be.
Well, hence the name.
Yeah.
It's so moving on to your brutish back nine. So the back nine comes in at 4,100 yards.
Yeah, that's turned out a bit tough. Unintentional, really.
There are 3 par 4s that are over 440 yards. There's only 1 3, which is probably where the yardage comes in. But the Ailsa, iconic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 10 going round the bay is, I think, one of the most special bits of golfing ground, really, that you can imagine. Just arcing around the bay. There's not many of our links that really play about with the coastline that actually have it as a hazard, as a feature of the hole. 10, I think, when there was an opportunity to push the green back, the tee had already come down onto the coast. It's gone even further back. It would, just having that horizon line green has just sort of put the icing on the cake, I think. So that just the way it runs around the coastline, I think is one of the most majestic places in golf. Teeing off by the lighthouse isn't bad either.
Now you've got a par 3 from Royal Liverpool, the 11th. Long par 3, good par 3. It was in my Eclectic 18, so congratulations you. I'm quite interested to talk about the new par 3 that's going to be in for the 2023 Open, which is a complete redesign.
It is, yeah.
How's that settling in? Are we excited about seeing it? This will be the 17th hole in.
Be the 17th hole, in
it's
open.
Another short par 3
layout.
Martin.
Very short, yeah. Was it? I thought it was 150, but I think it's about 135.
Yeah, I think so.
It's so short. Horizon line green, and again, it wasn't conceived by us really. We were asked to comment upon the opportunities, and then really mastermind the detail of it. And I'm really pleased how it's shaped up. But I know that it's a tough hole for members to play day in, day out. I really appreciate that. But I hope that, a bit like the postage stamp is revered at Royal Troon, no one would take that hole out. And I'm not saying we've created something as great as the postage stamp, but I think it's in that sort of league and character. And come the Open, anything can happen on that 71st hole. That if you don't quite get the ball up and it rolls back into the front bunker, which then turns into a sand area, then that you could be there all day. The bunker right hand side is so deep below the green that you're playing to a very shallow green at that point. Don't want to be long. Left is probably the bunker to miss it in if you're going to miss it anywhere. But if there's any wind playing across the hole, then that is going to be really tricky. Tough. And the other benefit to that whole change was the club 16th, the Open 18th, being lengthened, or having the opportunity then to lengthen that by about probably 50 or 60 yards.
Which then allows, I suppose, brings in more of the driving range,
the cop,
into play.
Yeah. And in fact, the cop was tightened up a little bit as well on that right side. So I think the tee shot on 18 is really tough now. And Rory was hitting
them to get to the corner still, or
with a really good blow.
Yeah.
But Rory hit a drive and a 5-iron, and I think on the Saturday pitched it on the green. It's not all about lengthening, but certainly when you've got a final hole in the Open, you do, and it's a par 5. You want them to be able to get up in 2.
And it's got that OB there, and you want to bring that in. Like if they can just bully the way out of that out of bounds, does distract from that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the reasons Carnoustie is so great is its finish. Anything can happen.
Yeah.
And I think we'll have the same thing at the Open at Royal Liverpool next year.
So I did move on. The 11th. What's so good about the 11th?
11th. Well, the Alps. I think just as Hoylake has that wonderful coastline stretch. I think the 11th is probably one of the key components of that stretch of golf holes. It just sits there. You say it's a long par 3, but the runoff on the left hand side. It's a classic par 3 in the dunes, I think. So definitely.
Yeah, it's a lovely golf hole. Yeah. 11. We've talked about 12 with Askernish and your naked friend. Lytham. Lytham's, I think, one of the most interesting. You'd go for 13, because I think when I went to Lytham, I thought the front nine, the bunkering on the front nine is just majestic. And I remember I went to the amateur this year and watched Pockita win the amateur. and I walked it again, and though that stretch around the turn is very, very difficult, I think I think it's the last two that I think 13, 15, very, very difficult.
Well, 13's a short four.
Oh, and then 14,
15, 14 and 15 are the two tough fours. That's
a great one, that 13.
Yeah, it stirs sort of memories of Sevi, sort of taking Lytham on, and winning twice, obviously. And the green surface as well has got such beautiful, subtle undulations. Really, people use subtle quite often when they actually describe in really big slopes. But I think those green shapes are really, attractive and very soft. But there's definite movement in there.
Do you think subtle greens often, in some ways, flummox golfers more? Because if it's a big, you can say, okay, this is right to left, obvious right to left. It's just how much.
Yeah.
Whereas I think some of the more demanding greens are ones that are so, like you say, subtle. I don't know if this is left or right.
Yeah. Well, you could argue the case that St Andrews, we talked about the old course, the 9th. It seems like the flattest green on the course. It is the flattest green on the course, but as a result, it's almost the most difficult. You're so often hitting, if a long putt potentially if you've got quite close to the green again on a drivable 4, but very, very difficult to lay it up dead. So yeah, I think there's an element of truth in what you say there. If you've got a big slope, you really know what you've got to do. You've got to hit it to a spot and let it use the contours. But no, I think 13. Again, it's stirred a little bit by Sevi because he was the great hero.
Is he a big
absolutely
idol of yours?
Yeah, and lucky to have a bit of a connection with Pedreña in Spain, where my wife comes from Santander, and her first comment to me was, "Yes, I've tried Sevi's green jacket on," and I said, "No, I don't think you have." Thought, it has to be an Augusta, and she was absolutely right, and I basically called her a liar within 5 minutes.
Well, it obviously worked for you, Martin.
Well, I don't know. She's still with me.
Luckily, you don't have to do it anymore. But if in future you need to, just call them a liar and go from there.
Yeah.
Foxy, the 14th at Dornoch. Another bunkless golf hole.
Well, I mean, just Tom's my partner. He's a member up there, and just always sings its praises. I don't know Dornoch anywhere near as well as Tom does, but if Tom says it's right up there, then I think it needs to be in. And the green, I know the plateau green, and again the shapes on it. That's something very special. So, but a tough 4. Lucky I had a shorter 4 on 13 at Lytham, but
we're in for a treat of tough 4s. 445 yards is Foxy. I think it's a magnificent golf hole. There's no getting away from it. It's so simple in its design. Really.
And I think if people think of Dornoch, then Foxy's probably the hole that they do think about. So it fell well in terms of the Eclectic 18, I think.
And then we're on to the Kent coast again, Princes.
Yeah, and Princes, I don't know if this is allowed in the rules. It's actually the 6th on the dunes, but
it's the 15th somewhere.
Yeah,
depends on where you start.
15th. Exactly. There's 2 other 9s that you can play to make it the 15th, and it's probably a 5 actually, but I called it a 4. It's in some ways it's got 5 as a character, but I thought 4 5s might be a bit too many.
Yeah, well, it starts at 5. Why do you think 4 5s is too many?
Well, no, maybe it isn't, but it seems. I think my course would be
it's a 506 yard par.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I think again when you're thinking of I guess tournament golf, then it would be a 4 these days. Yeah. So if the Open ever came back to Princes,
well, they do have the qualifying there, don't they? So.
Yeah, have qualifying there. Then I think it would be, unless the tee goes way back, then 506 would be a 4. Is
your work with Princes at an end now, or is this still ongoing?
No, ongoing. Yep. Ongoing. I think it's great working for with Rob McGurk and his father.
He's done some fabulous stuff there, hasn't he?
Yeah, and it's brilliant. The fact that if Rob and Mick say it's going to happen, it happens, and you just get on with it.
Is that the benefit of working at a proprietary?
Absolutely, yeah.
Is it easier?
Oh, it's so much easier. Much easier. I mean, that's why Turnberry was such a fun project. Really, is that again, it was just really having to please one owner.
Was Donald? Was he involved in it heavily or
heavily? Yeah, no, it was amazing.
Does he know his golf?
Yeah, he comes up with loads of ideas. It was when we first.
He strikes me as someone that wouldn't listen to you if you told him that this is the best thing to do.
He still wants to move the 6 over onto the coast, which there's one photograph of us standing on that green, and you can tell from my body language that I'm not moving that green. It's the 6 at Turnberry. Should be in here really, but it's.
Was he fun to work with?
Yeah, he was. It was really.
Do you
fun.
learn a lot from a man like that?
Sorry,
Do you learn a lot from a man like
I
that?
think the fact that just look at every possibility was really one of the lessons that I learned. We went down so many rabbit holes, but occasionally we came back up again and found a really good a good outcome. I didn't think we'd be having exposure to him when we were commissioned to do the work, and was so surprised when he was there on the buggy looking at everything that we did. Every time we were there, he was on the planning side of it. Then of course he was running for presidency and then became president, so he wasn't around, but certainly we were sending him back photographs, plans and whatever, and he would come send them back with scribbles all over them. And so no, it was a fun experience.
Did you make many changes to the second course there, Robert the Bruce?
Yeah, fair number of changes.
Was there the same level of interest in
absolutely. He was very full on, had some big ideas for it, possibly a major rerouting more than happened in the end. But I think making more use of that land at the far end of Turnberry is where the course really hits a high note. So that was completely rerouted.
I'm going to sound like an awful podcast. It's somewhere else I've yet to visit is Turnberry.
Really? Yeah, well,
it's that land is
nice that.
there's some iconic golf holes on Turnberry. So,
but no, come back to Prince's. I think that hole, it's just the Dunes 9 is one of the great they're all great nines, but that hole in particular, the green, I think is what prompts it. It's a really long green front to back. It's got a big drop off or big run off on the left hand side. And the dunes down the right hand side of the entire length of the hole, I think, give it real character. So very deserved part of the Eclectic 18.
We've already talked about the gorgeous green on the 16th of Cinque Ports, but is that the reason it made it into your 16th?
Yeah, I think the green is one big part of it, and the green surrounds. But we're lucky enough again to be asked by the club to look at the whole course. Found through the old aerial photography that there used to be a second half of fairway up on the left hand side of the approach area to the hole. Somehow it had just disappeared over time and grown up as rough, so we restored that. And it's just great to have those options of how do you play the hole. Yeah. It's floated between a 4 and a 5 over the years, but I think very much was a bogey 5 when it was first conceived. So now it is a par 5. And if you can't get up in 2, then there's a big reason to go down the left onto this bit of fairway that we've restored, because you get a beautiful view into the green from there. Whereas down on the bottom, which can flood when real winter high water table levels come up, and perhaps that's why they had an alternative route to the fairway to the left. Do you
think that's a generic kind of thing that's happened over time with most British courses, that we've kind of lost fairway?
Very much. I mean, it's always pretty much a unanimous, always a consistent finding that fairways have become much narrower, and maybe with reason. They were so wide, some of them in the past, and width is a good thing. There's no doubt about it. You don't want to be telling people exactly where to hit it down the. It's got to be within a 15, 20 yard width of fairway. But you can see how things have evolved over the years. So generally, our advice is mow out the fairways back to what they were. Certainly at Royal St George's, which was getting a bad name quite often, from the pros, hitting it right down the middle and ending up in the rough. Said, well, when you've got those beautiful undulations, don't dumb them down. Just make your fairways wider again. So that's happened here. That's
one of the great things about the old course is that fellow architect Clyde Johnson came on the podcast a few months back, and he said, think about the old course, you can hit the same drive 2 days in a row, and because of those undulations, you can be playing from vastly different places.
True.
Which makes the whole that much more interesting, because you're not playing the same thing 2 days in a row. But if you suddenly make all that rough, you can't play from, and the ball ends up in the same spots. And,
no, it's a good point. When you think of when you've got no life in the fairways, when it's and there's no run on the ball, then the ball is always staying in the same place with the same tee shot. So it's a very good point, Clyde.
And your final golf hole, which I think is one of my favourite holes. It doesn't play the 18th in the Senior Open.
No.
But the 18th at Royal Porthcawl, I think, plays the first in the Senior Open, isn't it?
Plays as the first, you're right.
Yeah.
Well, I was
think
pleased
one of the best, because the sun sets behind it as well. So if you're playing it in the evening, it's the 18th of Royal Porthcawl. Tell us about it.
Well, it was good to discover that you're actually Welsh. So
I'm a proper Welshman, see.
So I knew that would please you then in the end. And when you said it was your favourite course, then
it's one of my favourites, for sure.
So no, I think it's so rare to have a hole that plays perpendicularly towards the coast, and to have that as a visual feature in the background. I guess born by the incredible position of the clubhouse, and as we said, what a wonderful clubhouse it is. Hopefully that will never change. But to see that sort of sweep down the slope, as you say, sun does set in that direction, so it can be even more testing. It's a tough four, often played into the wind. But I think again, it's just the green. It's almost like Donald's description of the fifth at Worlington. Just the way it just drifts its way down the slope so effortlessly.
Away from
it's brilliant. And I have to say, it was a scene of quite a sad end to a match. It was Oxford against Cambridge match, and my captain at the time, Jamie Rumble. In fact, Gordon McSween was the captain, but Jamie was the secretary of that year. He was captain the next year. But he was playing against his Oxford opponent, who managed to sort of top it off the tee and top his third shot. Jamie had hit a drive and a 3 were dead into the wind to the front edge of the green. So he
that's
was
the
there
prevailing wind, isn't it?
The prevailing wind, yeah. So Jamie was there in 2. The Oxford guy was there in 4. And so he's the game over, just and especially when the Oxford man just knocked it down and had his 6. So Jamie hits his first putt and doesn't quite hit it hard enough, so he's left 10 feet, short. And then his next putt just almost stops at the hole and then just drifts on another 18 inches, 2 feet, and he missed the return. And that was the only reason he didn't end up with a 100% record.
Wow.
And sadly, poor Jamie, he died from cancer at the age of 27, I think it was, 26, 27. He was one of the most wonderful people you could meet. Shock of blonde hair. Everyone remembered him. But he, that if there's another fitting reason to choose 18 at Porthcawl, then it's in Jamie's memory, because it was brilliant to know him. It's brilliant to know that 18th at Porthcawl. I think it is. I was struggling for the 18th, and all of a sudden I thought, God, Porthcawl, I haven't got Porthcawl in. And then that just hit me. It's got to be the 18th at Porthcawl.
Well, that's the thing about golf, isn't it? Is it gives us all these wonderful stories and wonderful memories, and allows people, even if it's winning a match on a Thursday night against who cares who, they allow you opportunities to do memorable things. And I think that's the best thing about our sport, is that we can have these wonderful opportunities, these wonderful moments to remember these wonderful people. So
really.
Martin, I'm going to finish it. It's 4,100 yard par, 9 holes. It's a par, what have we got, 73 at 7,400 yards. You are a sadist, but Martin, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Pleasure.
And it's been wonderful. Thank you for coming.
I wouldn't want to play that back 9, but it's nice to just select.
It'd take you a while.
Yeah.
It's a lot of travel.
Tom, thank you very much. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Watch this.